Welcome to another edition of Responder Resilience. I'm David Dachinger. We have a great show tonight with a special guest who is a peer support team leader. We're going to get into that in a minute. Stand by and watch this intro. When I was trained to become a firefighter and an EMT, very little time was devoted to educating us about job-related stress, burnout, trauma, sleep disruptions, and mental health. We didn't know that there were life-saving resources, resilience strategies, and support groups that help first responders to cope with anxiety, depression, and stress. It's a huge understatement to say that first responder mental health is in crisis. Fire, police, and EMS are professions where more die by their own hands than by the hazards of the job. And research shows that up to a quarter of public safety dispatchers have symptoms of PTSD and depression. In this silent worldwide crisis, first responders are quietly suffering due to stigmas around mental health services and lack of awareness about vital resources that are available to assist them. We can help the helpers. Welcome to Responder Resilience, a panel of experts sharing their wisdom and experience from the front lines of first responder health and wellness. I'm David Dachinger, retired fire lieutenant and EMT with over 20 years as a leader in emergency services. Dr. Stacy Raymond is a clinical psychologist and is an approved EMDR and trauma specialist. Half of her practice is dedicated to first responders and military veterans. Stacy created Responder Wellness Inc., a nonprofit charity for EMS, police, and fire. Stacy co-leads a weekly peer support meeting for first responders along with Bonnie Rumilly. Bonnie is a licensed clinical social worker specializing in the treatment of adults, adolescents, children, and first responders. Bonnie worked in Newtown treating trauma directly after the Sandy Hook school shootings and is an EMDR therapist. A board member of the Fairfield County Trauma Response Team, Bonnie's also a 21-year emergency medical technician. Just wanted to remind you we're on Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, on YouTube, the Responder Resilience channel, Facebook, Responder Wellness Inc., and E360 TV Health and Wellness. So we appreciate it if you like and subscribe. I'm going to bring on Bonnie Rumilly and Rex Sprosta, who are going to be talking about peer support tonight. Rex was hired by the New Canaan, Connecticut Police Department in 2004. Before serving in New Canaan, he was a U.S. Marine Corps member and is currently assigned to the Patrol Division and serves as Acting Sergeant, Dispatcher, and Field Training Officer. Rex is also in charge of the department's Bicycle Patrol Unit, Physical Fitness Program, and Child Safety Seat Installation Program. If that's not enough, Rex is also the Peer Support Coordinator, EAP liaison, and is responsible for facilitating communication between officers in order for colleagues to receive the proper resources and services that they may need. Rex, Bonnie, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here. That was a mouthful.
It certainly was, but I'm impressed with all the things that you're up to.
Thank you.
Rex, it's great to have you here, and I think you are overqualified to give this interview on peer support. I know you've done a lot of great work with the peer support program, and I'd love to ask you some questions about that.
Of course.
So what got you interested in peer support?
It's one of those things where over time at the PD and seeing that there wasn't much in place for the younger officers coming in and some of the things they're going to see, I was trying to figure out what I could do to help the younger ones coming in, and even some of the vets that were working alongside me. So when the training for peer support came along, I jumped on the opportunity, and it's a perfect match for my personality and the kind of person that I am.
So the stars kind of aligned, so to speak.
Yes, it did. And the good folks with Jim Riscati and his crew, they are wonderful to us and what they do for us. So it's a perfect match for who I am.
And how long have you been leading the team, Rex?
It's been about 5 years now. It's been about 5 years, and we have four guys that, we go to different trainings throughout Connecticut. Their trainings are being held in different parts of the state, so we all meet other officers that are peer support members. So, for example, if there's an officer that needs assistance and I can't help him, I will put him in contact with another officer from another department that will be able to help him, or someone that's, of similar experience, if we can find that match.
That's great. And just for the viewers that might be kind of new to the career, new to the profession, or don't know a lot about peer support, can you talk a little bit about what the actual purpose of a peer support team is?
Okay. So let's say there's a traumatic incident. What people don't realize oftentimes is someone dies every day, and there's usually an officer with that person until the body is removed. And over time, over the years, that can take its toll on an officer that's seeing it over and over again, or something a little bit more serious, more traumatic incident, suicide, shotgun blast, things of that nature. So it helps. It just gives us a chance to we find someone to diagnose who's in distress. If we can see that they're having a tough time, we'll pull them aside quietly without everyone else knowing. In peer support, confidentiality is everything. So, and try and get them to connect with the services that they may need, quietly, without big fanfare, because a lot of officers are oftentimes reluctant to see a psychiatrist or a shrink or someone of the like. So they would rather talk to someone that they're comfortable with as opposed to someone that they're not.
Right.
And if most of the time we facilitate, an easier way of just getting them there without making it into, without all the pomp and circumstance and fanfare.
So you're kind of the liaison or the vehicle for people to getting to further help if they need it, but you can also be someone who's providing them support on a regular basis as a peer support member.
Absolutely. So and oftentimes we're just an ear to let someone vent and get out what they need to get out. If someone's remembering a call that they were on that was on their mind, and it was a little traumatic for them, they'll sometimes we just take a ride, go get a coffee, and we sit there and we talk, and how did you handle this call? What did you do after you saw what you saw? And a lot of times the listening, I just sit there and shut up and let them get it out. Every once in a while I might ask a probing question, but most of the time I listen, and a lot of times I hear a thank you at the end. So it's it's just being there for them. We need to be there for each other, so we work together all the time. So.
And do you feel like because it's a peer support model, it happens somewhat organically, where you can just say, hey, let's grab a coffee and we'll talk about it, or hey, I'm going to give you a ring tomorrow after our shift, something kind of that's organic and natural for you and them anyway in the course of a relationship?
Yes, that's actually the easiest part, where we have a relationship, and it wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary to say, hey, let's go grab a coffee. So it's just, we go grab a coffee, and we sit there and talk, and whatever comes up. And if you sit there and you talk long enough, or, we're park up together in a parking lot somewhere and you talk long enough, a lot of the things will rise to the surface, and, we can address them. And if I feel like there's a concern, I would suggest, maybe you should talk to someone else, and then go from there, or encourage it a couple of times over and over again. Eventually it works.
Right. You can sort of be that constant voice, or that constant sounding board that's always there to mirror it back to them.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and trust is the most important part. So, if they've trusted me over the years with me suggesting, hey, maybe you should go speak to someone else that's a little higher in the food chain than I am, that will help, and oftentimes it does work. So. And, a lot of them will follow up and say, hey, I appreciate you listening, or thank you for the suggestion.
So you mentioned the topic of confidentiality, which we talk a lot about in our profession. And do you think that for police, confidentiality is even more important to them in unlocking getting help?
Absolutely, because no officer, guy or girl, wants to show weakness, right? And in front of their peers. So if, through normal conversations, we can say, hey, I need help, and you quietly suggest a direction for them to go in where they can get the help that they need, it doesn't seem like something out of the ordinary, or someone is showing weakness, or someone's, not being able to handle the job, so to speak. So yes, it's actually one of the most important things in peer support.
And who oversees the peer support team in your agency? I know you're the head of it, but what does that look like for an outsider looking in?
So we follow up with, most of the time, the chief of police. So there is a chain of command that you would think for peer support. If there's an issue, for example, if there's a traumatic incident that's affected, an entire shift, the chief and I would have a conversation. He's like, "What do you think?" I'm like, "Oh, maybe we should call Jim or doing what we call an AAR, after action review. Some people call it an after action report." And we bring in Jim Riscati and from behavioral health consultants to at least sit there and have a conversation with the shift. And if from that conversation we see that, some may be having a tougher time than others, then we'll, make it a more exclusive thing, quietly, of course. And the chief is aware, the people that need to be aware are aware without everyone else in the building knowing what's going on.
And that also is an opportunity, it seems like, for if there needs to be a debriefing, right? If there's a further debriefing that needs to happen, then you're going to have your finger on that pulse in that after action.
Yes, that's the main reason for doing it. That just getting engaged on where everyone is based on the call that we're on, and after that call is over, then we after the after action is over, then we go see who's might need some more help along the way, and then if we're able to identify, we have a conversation with them, and
I think you mentioned you have 4 or 5 team members.
There's 4 team members right now.
4 team members. So you're the lead, and then you've got 3 that kind of report to you.
Yeah, we kind of do things together. So I don't like the reporting to me thing, but yeah, we do it together. It's more of if there's a conversation that needs to be had, I will call Jim, take the lead, and just facilitate what needs to be facilitated. To if there's an officer or someone that we're concerned about. Okay. But and most people, for whatever reason, reach out to me, and then it goes from there. So it's you can say I take the lead if you like.
Let's say that the leading happens naturally.
It does. That's the best way to say it. It's the best way to say it.
That way.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what kind of training does an officer need to go through to become a peer support team member?
So it's a good question. Jim Riscati from Behavioral Health Consultants brought the program forward, and then we selected officers from our department to go to the training. So prior to COVID, we had, in a year, we would have 2-3 training sessions where we would go to different departments, or go to a couple times we went to the GE campus in Fairfield, Connecticut, where, before Sacred Heart took over. And what would happen is all of the peer support members would be there from different departments statewide. So we have a reach as far as New Haven and beyond. So, in that room, you have a couple hundred officers, and we're hearing stories of someone that's gone through something traumatic, and how to help. An example would be a New Haven officer was involved in a shooting, and he didn't realize the impact it would have on him until afterwards, and not being able to go back to work, the investigation that ensues, and all of the things that are going to come from that, once there's an officer involved shooting. And he was in the room explaining this, and it's one of those things where everyone else in the room, you could hear a pin drop because there was complete silence and people understanding that there may be a time where you're going to have to do what most officers refuse to do or would not want to do, and what happens after that. And he explained it. There were some tears in the room with the way he was explaining what he went through, and it was very powerful. There was another a lieutenant from the NYPD that came in. I forget, his name escapes me right now, but he came in. This is another separate training, and he told us about his experience with his men when they were searching the rubble. So on 9/11. So he was explaining this story, and he starts off in like a joking way, and then it shows you how things change. So what was happening with the people that were working for him is he wanted to figure out what he could do for his officers to help them, because they were seeing some pretty gruesome stuff. So he brought in some psychiatrists to help, maybe blend in, with the guys and see if that works. Because the people that he initially consulted with were more forceful and not as relaxed or passive,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't work out right away. So then he had a friend that introduced him to another psychiatrist who came in and just stood quiet and just watched. And every day the psychiatrist came, and it was almost like he was living with the officers and what they were going through, because he never probed or pushed. And every time, what happened over time was every time someone had something they needed to do, they wanted the shrink to go with them. And that's when the talking started to happen. And they were expressing what they were feeling. So it was just him putting in the time for him.
So that's what I'm hearing, that it's so important for police especially to have that constant contact, whether it's peer support, or if a department has its own mental health liaison. Listening. I'm hearing that the listening piece is the most important.
Listen, people tend to shut down if you push.
Yeah.
But if you're there and they know you're going through it with them, or they feel like you're going through it with them, or they see you every day, they're more apt to say, this is what's going on, because you're with them, every step of the way. So it's one of those things that, people that want to help need to understand that they need to just work with the people that they're trying to help. Slow down, slow the pace down, give them time to come around to you as opposed to you forcing it out of them.
That's really helpful, Rex.
Yeah.
We're going to go into a little break and we'll be back shortly.
No problem.
Thanks, Bonnie and Rex. A quick break. We'll be right back.
Our mission at Responder Wellness, Inc. is to subsidize or provide free of charge safety equipment and wellness services to first responders, including police officers, firefighters, EMS personnel, and 911 operators throughout Connecticut. Resources include scholarships to train new EMTs, a responder and veteran-only AA group in Danbury, Connecticut, as well as Police Fest, a fire and EMS boot program, yoga classes, gym memberships, and T-shirts. The founder of Responder Wellness, Inc. co-leads a peer support group sponsored by Fairfield County Trauma Response Team. Responder Wellness, Inc. is a nonprofit 501c3. Find us on the web at responderwellness.org, on Facebook at Responder Wellness, Inc., or email us responderwellness@gmail.com. Responder Wellness, Inc., putting responders first.
And welcome back to Responder Resilience. We're talking with Bonnie Rumilly, LCSW and EMT, and board member of the Fairfield County Trauma Response Team, and Rex Sprosta, who's the peer support coordinator of the New Canaan, Connecticut peer support team, among many other things. So I'll let you guys pick up where you left off in this great conversation.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
So I want to go back to something you said before, Rex. You were mentioning just how the training works, but is it necessary for an officer to have any kind of psychological training, certification, anything like that?
The way we do it right now, no, it is not necessary. It's just more of we are not doing the diagnosing, we're doing the facilitating. So it's more of taking advantage of the intimate relationships that we have with our coworkers to get them to where we need them to go, to ultimately get them back to work. I don't want to say all well, but, as well as we can get them under the circumstances or some of the things that they're going to experience in their careers.
I think it's a brilliant model, and what you're saying and all the examples that you're able to give show that it works. And I think what we're seeing on our end from the peer support group that we run every Friday, people need to be with their peers, no matter what the issue is. Need people to understand what they do. And the fact of the matter is, what first responders do, what police do, it's so important and critical that the peers around you or therapists, anyone from the outside, they really have to understand the culture and understand the nature of these calls that people are going through.
Absolutely. I mean, from the suicide to the sudden death to a car accident with significant injuries, that takes its toll over time. I mean, I can use myself as an example. There was an incident a few years ago where an individual committed suicide with a shotgun. And, I don't want to describe how he did it, but it was a messy scene. And it's one of those things where, you think about the family members and what is going to happen next. And then you start to think about your own family while you're there, because now we're waiting for the medical examiner to show up, which takes some time. And you're seeing this person just no longer here. And it starts to play tricks on your mind, and in time, if you don't take the time to get the help that you need, and sometimes it starts with your friend, with your peers, where they, sometimes some of them have a weird way of doing things where they'll say some weird jokes while we're there at a horrible scene. And then, but that's their way of coping, and then there's other times where some of them just get very quiet, and it's just there with their thoughts, and, and there are others that are, they can eat and have dinner next to someone that's deceased, which is a little strange, but it's they separate themselves from it and they try to block it out completely, which some can do as well. So it's important, because people need to realize every day someone dies. Every day there's an officer there, there's a fireman there, there's an EMT there, there's a paramedic there, and they're seeing it over and over again. At some point, that starts to take its toll.
You're right. I think you're bringing a good point into the spotlight, which is that police aren't just out there to arrest people and to make traffic stops.
Right.
You are there doing this whole other side of things that maybe your average person doesn't realize. And it does take its toll. But I think the good thing is that with peer support, with the mental health bill that came through the state that now covers police, fire, EMS, corrections, dispatch, PTSI will now be covered for job-related incidents. So I think the momentum has really started to gain traction.
It has.
And what you're saying coincides with that, because it's educating our viewers on what's the big picture here.
Right.
And I think a lot of people have a different view of police, but I think you're giving a full picture, which is really important.
I mean, I can even go even deeper if you think about it, right? Let's say someone dies out of state. There's usually a police officer that's doing the death notification to the family member in state or in the town.
Right.
And then you have to see the reaction of that family member,
right.
Who they have no one to console. And sometimes they're hugging a police officer. It's people overlook the smaller nuances of the job that we have to do. And, there are times when we try and do it as softly as we can, even though we don't even know who the person is. We won't know the victim who's deceased, or we won't even know the family member that we're telling that their spouse or significant other has passed away. And, it's another aspect of the job that people overlook. And then you have to try and keep your emotions in check, because someone could be breaking down in front of you. And then what do you do to help them? How far are you willing to go as an officer to console someone you don't know?
Right.
Yeah.
It's just another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. Yep. Takes its toll. Takes its toll over time.
It does. And I think, it's interesting too, looking at the peer support model, like how many pieces are involved in that. And I was wondering about the documentation piece. Is there anything that you all are required to document with peer support, or is it more, I talked to so-and-so and you keep it really vanilla at the top level?
So it's more vanilla at the top level with a yearly number of recommendations.
Okay.
So there's a tally of, who was not necessarily a name, but of course the chief will know, but not necessarily a name, but a number of people that are recommended to, whether it's EAP or someone that needed help. And we try and keep it as minimal as possible to not to expose anyone to, some people are going to feel embarrassed. Some people don't want anyone to know. So we try and, be as discreet as we can.
So it's a protection, and it's a way to get help and to really have it be confidential. And when you just say 5 people were referred to EAP, then that's all we need to know. We don't need to know anything more.
Exactly.
But that's why the model works so well.
Yes. It's you say, last year, 6, 7, 10 people were referred. The chief knows who they are, but the entire department doesn't need to know, and it minimizes the embarrassment or the shame that some may feel that everyone else knows what they're going through, and they're considered weak and, not fit for the job and all the other things that can come with that. So, yeah, it works. It works really well.
What policies and procedures do departments need to have in order to run a peer support team? And I realize that some of it is newer, in the last couple of years for some departments, but what are the procedures that really have to be in place to allow this to happen?
Well, you have to have confidentiality, first of all. There is nothing specifically written down in our department for it. Everyone knows who the peer support members are. And if anyone has an issue, they go to them. The chief also knows. So let's say something happens.
Yeah.
The chief will reach out to one of us, or we reach out to him. Hey, so-and-so went on a call the other day. How are they doing? And I'll let you know. And it's one of those where now for the next shifts, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to see who's doing what, and then, how they're responding to what they saw, and we go from there. But there's no hard written down. You have to go to the peer support training to be able to talk to anyone, first of all. But besides that, there's nothing else documented, no other documentation that we have to abide by.
And how do you think the new mandate that came down from the state of Connecticut, which mandates peer support teams be in place, how do you think that impacts other departments? Yours already has it and has had it for 5 years. So I would say that's very progressive and eons ahead of what other places might be in. What do you think of that piece of it? What's the impact you think you're going to see on departments with that mandate?
I think over time, you're going to start to see that how effective it is in helping the officers that are needing help. There was an incident in an adjacent town where you had 2 officers that were at work, but not ready to go to work, if you know what I mean. And there were some issues that happened with them where other people in the department knew and no one did anything about it. As opposed, so they're at work, not in work shape. There may have been some intoxication. Other people in the building knew and didn't say anything about this. So now with the peer support coming into play, where some places are going to be mandated to have it, now you're going to have people reach out to each other, be like, listen, you can't do this, because this is going to affect all of us, and you go from, it has a way of getting out to everyone, which you'll be able to know who needs assistance sooner rather than after the fact when it's, local news, and then it's an embarrassing situation for the families and the officers.
So it sounds like really what you're saying is we're going to get to a place where we can prevent things from happening or from getting worse, because if people can right off the bat go to a peer and say, I'm struggling. Absolutely. Now we're getting on top of the issue immediately.
Absolutely. Yes. And that's the idea, to just stay ahead of it as opposed to behind, where you can mitigate some of the damage, so to speak, that can happen if you don't have something like this in place to address the individuals that need to be addressed before it gets out of control or out of hand.
And along those lines, you can get someone like me, a therapist who's trauma trained. You can get someone to a therapist that much quicker, which will also prevent damage to the officer themselves, to their colleagues, to their family,
their careers.
Yeah.
Yes.
We know all of that comes into play.
Yes, definitely. That's the whole. Hopefully, that's the whole idea of the bill, I think, to just get things going so, we can fix what we need to fix before it gets to where it's broken beyond repair. So,
do you think that the bill being voted in and enacted and the peer support teams being put in place, do you think that that's all going to help us destigmatize?
I am hoping so. There's going to be some pockets where you're still going to have some people that are, reluctant to come forward and just, let people know that they're not going through it alone. You're not alone. There are other people that are having problems too and are struggling. So hopefully it does some destigmatizing, but I'm optimistic. We'll see how it goes.
I am too. And that's why we're both here. And that's why we both do our work, right?
Right.
I guess for the viewers, is there anything else that you want to make sure that they understand about peer support? Any nuggets of wisdom, any closing thoughts that you have about this topic that we haven't covered?
I think, we are here. We need to be here for each other, and peer support is a way of doing so without everyone else knowing. So if you realize that an officer is struggling or a colleague is struggling, do what you can to put your hand on his shoulder and say, hey, I'm here for you. What can I do to help you? It's as simple as that. And then see what happens. Try not to be too pushy about it. Give it time, or maybe even use something that you do normally. Go get coffee. You're eating dinner together. If you're alone or you're parked up next to each other, which cops do all the time. And it's like, hey, you all right? What's going on? Talk to me, and then see where it goes from there. And then maybe, in time, if that happens often enough, you can get someone to the help that they need.
Right.
Before, it gets out of control.
So Rex, if anybody viewing this today wanted to get in touch with you, reach out, ask more questions, learn about how to put a peer support team in their department, how could they get in touch with you?
They can reach me via email at rex.sprosta@newcanaanct.gov. It's on the screen for your viewers to see. It's again, that's rex.sprosta@newcanaanct.gov.
I really want to thank you, Rex. You've taught us a lot in a short amount of time, and your passion shines through everything you say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rex. Yes, this was an outstanding sharing of information, and your service is exemplary. Thank you for all you do. Bonnie, again, thank you for being there and bringing Rex as a guest. We are so grateful that we have people who are stepping up to share their knowledge, their wisdom, their expertise in helping first responders to stay and become more resilient. So every conversation is important.
Yeah.
We encourage you to like, subscribe on YouTube, Responder Resilience channel, Facebook, Responder Wellness Inc., and on E360 TV. We're live Sunday nights, 7 p.m. So thank you, Rex. Thank you, Bonnie. It's been a great talk, and we'll see you the next time.
Thanks, David.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Stay safe.